So we have, we're going to be recording this panel discussion. So Nipun Malhotra, Amar Jain, and Sarah Sharma, could we have a brief introduction of yourselves?
Do you want me to go first?
The interpreter to be pinned just a sec, to be spotlighted as well. Yes. Yes, we will have you on, Nipun, first, and then we'll go with Amar and Sarah in a little while. Thank you. Thank you for accepting our invitation to be part of this panel discussion. So, could you share a little bit of a background about yourself, Nipun, so that everyone is aware?
Sure. Thank you so much, Amaldev.
So, about your work, your advocacy efforts, etc.
Sure. Thank you so much, Amaldev. Thank you for having me. I've been following Year a Million from a long time now, ever since Dr. Alim started it under Enable India. And I've been a big fan of everything that all of you have achieved. And I had the pleasure of interacting with you, Amaldev, when I was in the Enable India office as well. So thank you for having me here. I am Nipun Malhotra. I'm the founder of Nipan Foundation. I'm also a consultant with Enable India on their purple economy and legal side of work. I started the Nippon Foundation in 2012. This was after my master's in the Delhi School of Economics. When I was doing my master's, I decided to sit for placements for private sector jobs. And when I did that, I kind of saw the discrimination that people with disabilities face when they go for employment. I am a wheelchair user. I have this disability called arthrogryposis, which basically means that the muscles in my arms and legs are not fully developed, and that's why I'm a quadriplegic. The Nippon Foundation really works on three A's, as I like to call it, which are the three big problems people with disabilities face. Those are the first A is attitudes in terms of etiquettes and how to change attitudes and perceptions towards persons with disabilities in society. And we do a wide variety of things through conducting workshops, through awareness programs, etc. The second thing that we worked on is accessibility. Conventionally, when I was doing work on accessibility, I used to think that audits of physical infrastructure, etc. But apart from that, I've also done a lot of petitions and PILs on making India more accessible to persons with disabilities. For example, in 2016, I actually filed a PIL against the Delhi government, which forced the Delhi government to buy 2,000 buses that were fully accessible to persons with disabilities. The third A that I work on is affordability, which is the cost of living for a person with a disability. One of the initiatives in Nippon Foundation is this program called Wheels for Life, through which we've distributed around 2,000 wheelchairs to people who need them across the country through NGO partners in 25 states. This is a completely crowdsourced program in that sense. This is just a very brief introduction because, of course, I can go on, but I don't want to talk only about myself, but also want to go to the exciting questions that you're going to ask later. So that's it about me, and I'll hand over to the next speaker to introduce themselves.
Thank you. Thank you very much. So I was thinking I will call on Amar and Sarah in a little while. So could we move on with a question for you, Nipun? So you had actually in 2018, you had actually filed a PIL at the Supreme Court. So I just want to know a little bit about that, if you could shed some light on that.
Which PIL of mine are you talking about? Because I filed multiple PILs in the Supreme Court. So,
To make the Indian Sign Language as the official language.
oh, yes, of
Yes.
course. Yes,
And
I'd
you
filed a PIL on
demanded for
that.
that. Yeah.
I'd filed a PIL on that in the Delhi High Court, actually, not the Supreme Court. I had two other co-petitioners with me. One was the National Association of the Deaf, which was represented by Mr. Anuj Jain and Mr. Narayanan, and the third was Dr. Alim Chandani. So we done this together, and what I felt is that Indian Sign Language needs to become totally acceptable in this country. There's a Schedule 8 in the Indian Constitution that recognizes 22 languages, and when a language gets recognized in that Schedule 8, it gets a lot of legal protections, including higher budgets allocated by the government for research on that language, ensuring that various government documents are translated into that language, etc. So I thought that with this huge number of deaf population in India, it would be great if Indian Sign Language is recognized. Secondly, I also thought that for the deaf community, it would be a great moment of recognition, apart from the legal advantages that sign language gives, that the country is accepting the deaf people for what they are by recognizing Indian Sign Language. Unfortunately, the Delhi High Court said that this is Parliament's job, and that's why we cannot really interfere in adding a language to the Indian Constitution that way. But I still hope, and the more I've interacted with deaf people, I feel that it's more needed. And I hope the government one day recognizes Indian Sign Language within the Indian Constitution, because I think the deaf community deserves it. Because I really feel that, to be very honest, to a large extent, we all are people with disabilities in a way where we do not understand the language that the deaf community communicates in. And whenever I go to schools, etc., to give talks, etc., I always say that you're teaching foreign languages like German, French, Spanish, etc., as a third language after English and whatever regional language you are in. For example, in Delhi, Hindi is the second language. So why not teach Indian Sign Language as the third language, which is an Indian language rather than all these foreign languages as the third language, and make sure that everybody knows Indian Sign Language. Before this interaction started, and we came online for the panel, in a way, I was feeling missing out, because there were so many deaf people on the Zoom call also, for example, who were talking in sign language, and I was not understanding anything. And Dr. Renuka actually became my interpreter rather than the deaf community's interpreter when she was interpreting what you were speaking and the other deaf people in this Zoom call were speaking. So it's just a barrier in terms of accessibility of language, and I think the government can do a lot more to remove it.
Mhm. Yes, so that like in process or is that on hold? Could we have any updates on that or
Uh, unfortunately, there,
anything?
unfortunately, there is no update on it, because the Delhi High Court clearly said that it is Parliament's job. And after that, the government has done nothing about it, sadly. I mean, the government has done other things, like, for example, Indian Sign Language Research and Training Center, is developing a dictionary, and there are various courses that they're starting, etc. as well. But I think the government needs to do a lot more. And the government has not really taken any step, unfortunately, so far in legal recognition of Indian Sign Language, which is kind of sad, because even more of some of our neighboring countries like Nepal, I think, have their sign language which is legally recognized. So if these smaller countries which are not even as economically developed as India can have legally recognized sign language, I do not know why India does not have legally recognized sign language. And I think the deaf community needs to take this forward. And because this is the fight for the deaf, and I would be happy to be a foot soldier, helping the community wherever I can in taking it forward and ensuring Indian Sign Language gets legally recognized.
That's good. Thank you, thank you. Could we have Sarah Sunny, Advocate Sarah Sunny over? Could we have a brief introduction of yourself, Sarah? Thank you for inviting me to be part of this panel discussion and for this opportunity. I'm Sarah Sunny. This is my sign name. So I am a lawyer and I work on advocacy. I work on civil rights and criminal law and also civil laws and DRT, that's Debt Recovery Tribunal. So these are my areas of focus. I live in Bangalore. Thank you. So now you are a lawyer and So, what do you think that, the society in general, is aware of many, legal aspects and laws and all that. What do you think about the deaf? Uh, well, I am a deaf lawyer, so I I want to change the Rights of Persons with Disabilities Act, okay, for deaf and hard of hearing individuals. Now, that's something that I'd like to do I would like to, have professional interpreters as part of the legal procedures in court for hearings, trials, so that deaf people will be able to have full access to all the proceedings in court. Because right now, a lot of information gets missed in the process. I have that experience myself. So it's something that has to be, there has to be guidelines for interpreters in court. So even, during emergencies, so during police emergency or any emergencies, a deaf person is just taken without, being a chance to communicate. There's no access. So even during any accidents or emergencies or any medical emergencies or situations, so deaf just end up saying I'm deaf, and that closes up all communication pathways. So I also suggest that there should be the VRS, the video relay services, interpreters on call, where deaf people are able to access the services, they communicate through the virtual platforms, either through written mode. So me being a lawyer, you know, even for many other deaf individuals to study law, the accessibility aspect is very important. And that is something that I'd like to change and bring about. So what do you think is missing in the framework? And how do we go about this? Do you have to send some proposals or petitions? I am not very satisfied with the process. I mean, sometimes we have interpreters, even procuring an interpreter is a challenge. So I just want to make a system, So that's something that I'd like to plan. There are many hearing lawyers, and there's a structure that is to follow, right? And so how do you navigate you being a deaf lawyer in amidst hearing lawyers? So could you share your experiences? So yes, I was working on a disability advocacy. I wanted to change the system, and I was, so I was trying to work with a hearing lawyer. So So first I worked with the hearing lawyer because I wanted to learn about law and all the processes and procedures, right? And then focus on the disability law and all that. So, well, I was working with a hearing lawyer, and then sometimes, when I talk to deaf people also, for example, words such as evidence, then have to explain about that. For example, when hearing people file a case, okay, the procedures would be the same, be it deaf person or a hearing person. but there has to be more awareness and clarity and understanding. So I focus on work in the daytime, and in the evening, late hours, I work with many deaf individuals, consulting them, counseling them, and even as simple as procedures to file a petition. And I have to keep explaining, and got to be a lot of awareness, I see. So I feel that, okay, we are ready to file a case, but then suddenly that is being withdrawn because of some hesitations on some kind of apprehensions, and they withdraw. So, it varies from person to person, all right. But I feel that deaf people lack in confidence, and that confidence needs to be built. And that comes with understanding legal terminology and yeah, so I focus on my work during the day, and then I give time for this during late hours. Oh, that is so good that you're able to navigate and, focus on these both areas now. Could we have Amar Jain here? Could we have Amar Jain join
Hi.
us?
Yes, I'm right here. Am I audible?
Yes, now I'm able to see you clearly, Amar.
Okay.
So could you share a little background of your work and yourself?
Sure. Firstly, thank you so much, Here a Million team, Amaldev, for having me here. And I'm extremely sorry at the outset for being a very pathetic communicator in last 2 days because of a couple of matters being lined up and the days being very hectic. But thank you for having me here. It's an absolute pleasure to be here in this vibrant panel. Um I am professionally a corporate lawyer and accessibility professional. I work with both government and private players to make their offerings more inclusive and accessible for persons with disabilities. Because we are with this audience here today, uh, where we have people from people who are deaf and hard of hearing, I kind of wanted to talk about some of the work that I've been trying to do in this space to get more inputs and to learn from your experiences on what needs to be done more. So, for instance, whenever I work on digital accessibility with any player uh, where there is communication involved, I often talk about, so for instance, with players like Zomato and Uber, I have been pushing for a feature where user can set their preferences on how they want to be communicated. So, for example, if there's a person who's deaf or hard of hearing, can say that I only want to be communicated through chat instead of a call. And I was told very recently Uber India did launch that feature. Similarly, with Zomato, I've been doing this that for order deliveries, allow the user to set their preference of communication, whether you want the delivery partner to call you or text you, so that a person who's deaf and hard of hearing can at least use the chat feature to be able to communicate with the delivery partner. And by default, the partner should be able to chat with them instead of calling them. Uh, I have also pushed in my hearings with CCPD, which is Chief Commissioner for Persons with Disabilities, against DGCA, which is the Civil Aviation Regulator of India, to have basic awareness and training amongst the airport staff, the airline, and the other stakeholders of aviation sector on their awareness of sign language and their ability to be able to communicate in sign language, so that if there's a passenger who's deaf or hard of hearing is able to communicate on ticket counters, on check-in and boarding counters, so on and so forth. That piece has been moving very slow, but I'm at it. The other thing that we are doing aggressively with all the accessibility committees of the high courts, and even trying to do this at the Supreme Court level, as Sarah rightly mentioned, that communication is a key challenge for persons who are deaf or hard of hearing, for lack of sign language interpretation being available, for the way the entire procedure of court proceedings is designed, where by default it's a hearing between parties, where people who are not deaf or hard of hearing just use the verbal communication methods. And we've had this very interesting case of deaf Rakesh Kalra in Delhi, where an extensive judgment was given by Justice Swarnakanta Sharma on how and what judiciary can do to make judicial processes more friendly for persons who are uh, deaf or hard of hearing. So we are trying to make those things more accessible by having interpreters available on video call. We are also from time to time pushing for empanelment of sign language interpreters in different court structures, so that whenever somebody needs sign language interpretation can make a request to the registry, and they should be provided, and the cost of them the same should be borne by the court itself. We have had some challenges here, I'll be honest, because in some situations, when the court has required services of a sign language interpreter, instead of sending a normal letter, they have received summons from the court, which actually has caused a lot of anxiety and stress for natural reasons amongst people who are interpreters. So we are trying to sort those out and trying to build better awareness. We have also held very recently a session in Delhi High Court, which was conducted by Zamir, who's a deaf-blind individual, to sensitize judges and lawyers about challenges that deaf-blind people face and how we can make judicial systems more accessible for them. So, if any of our team members have any inputs on any of these aspects, please feel free to reach out to me offline on WhatsApp or on emails, and we'll be happy to have a chat. Thank you.
Uh, Ma'am, you're on mute. Renuka, ma'am.
Apologies. Apologies. Sorry. So you are planning on, supporting and provide and ensuring that there's accessibility for deaf and deaf-blind individuals, and giving that space for
Yes.
accessibility. Thank you very much. So now you being a blind, person, and so how does the society see a blind individual? How is it perceived by the society? And so, and what do you think should be changed in how the society sees and how that equality is gained? Could you share a bit about that, your perception?
Sure. So, I think it's fair to say, even in general, not just for people with blindness, that in day to day life, still there is a lot of lack of awareness amongst societies on how people with disabilities function or what their capabilities are. Most often, when society sees a person with a disability, the entire focus shifts on disability as opposed to the person being a person with disability. Uh, What I mean here is essentially, in general, when you meet a person, you look at the person first and you understand that, X or Y is a person as opposed to person with a disability. But when you meet a person with a disability, your focus completely shifts around the disability of the person and the preconceived notions that you may have had about what a person with a disability can do or cannot do. So that has been a biggest challenge so far. Having said that, I would also say that in last couple of years there has been improvement in people's understanding of disability, in people's receptivity towards issues of persons with disabilities, and even in sensitivity of people towards persons with disabilities. However, I still feel that there is a massive need for doing campaigns, for awareness generation activities, and so on you know what are functional abilities of people with disabilities, and how with their disability they are able to live, they're able to perform all the functions that anyone without a disability will be able to do. That awareness still needs to be created, even in masses at large. I also feel that not all persons with disabilities have had equal voice uh, at the forefront. There are few disabilities which are more vocal and are more visible, but there are some disabilities which are not even understood by people, and their voices or their uh, needs don't reach the masses. Uh, so we need to have a structure where more and more people with disabilities and of different disabilities are able to communicate their needs, and uh, work with the masses to have their own place in the society and share in the societal system, so to speak.
That's really good. Thank you.
Thank you.
Could we have Nipun back here?
Hi.
That's good. Yes, the next question is, a person with disability, be it a wheelchair user or deaf or blind, there's an intersectionality. So how can support be rendered to such individuals? There's different needs of accessibility, and there's intersectionality there. How could we, what suggestions would you propose to be able to resolve, to be able to provide more accessibility and inclusive space for them?
I think one of the most important things is that the disabled community itself needs to speak with a unified voice for the needs of every person with a disability in that sense. And I'm not just talking about just people with locomotor disabilities like mine, or somebody who's deaf like you, or blind like Amar, but all disabilities, really, like, in the RPWD Act recognizes 21 disabilities, but there are many disabilities beyond that as well. A lot of invisible disabilities as well, which often get forgotten in this country. And even the disabled community, within the disabled community, there are some disabilities that, Amar also said are more vocal, that sometimes start ignoring other disabilities. For example, I'll give you a recent example that happened in India, where there was this lady called Pooja Khedkar who had a fake disability certificate, and through that she entered the civil services. And she got caught eventually after that. But there were a lot of people within the Indian bureaucracy also that started talking after that, that people with invisible disabilities or mental health issues or neurological disabilities should not really, be considered disabled, etc., which was something extremely disappointing. And I was very happy to see that a lot of people within the disabled community fought stood up against them in that sense and said that no, all disability should be recognized. More recently, I was actually in a meeting with Sarah Sunny, in fact, who's here in this panel as well. When the Ministry of Social Justice and Empowerment fixed the meeting after the Rajiv Rastogi judgment to set up accessibility standards. And the Ministry of Social Justice had not arranged a sign language interpreter. And it was very good to see that the entire disability community refused to attend that meeting, and the meeting had to be rescheduled the next day when a sign language interpreter was organized. So I think to really ensure that all disabilities get included, we all have to fight for each other's rights. Of course, you have to lead the way for deaf, and I might have to lead the way for locomotor. But you will have to be my ally, I'll have to be your ally, and all of us will have to work together. And it's only then that India will become an equal opportunity country for persons with disabilities. But more importantly than that, we'll be able to show our numbers to the government, to the private sector, etc., and show that we are a huge population. We are India's largest minority in that sense, and it's only at your own risk that you can ignore us that way. So, yeah, I think unity, strength is in unity.
Nipun, I have another question for you. So, do you think, among the 21, disabilities, there's one particular disability and there's so many disabilities. So, do you think advocating for one particular disability is the way to go, or advocating for all 21 disabilities together is it?
So, I think
What
it
do you
has
have to say?
I think it has to be a combination of both things. Sometimes, of course, you have to advocate for a specific disability as well. For example, if I go to an event and that event has steps and I cannot even go up the steps in that sense, I'll obviously have to advocate for my own disability also and say that I'm a wheelchair user. You've invited to me an event. It is so stupid that you've invited me and you've not even built a ramp for me that way. So, in a situational basis, obviously, you have to fight for a specific disability. For example, Amaldev, if you are invited for a meeting and a sign language interpreter is not organized, it is your right to fight for your own specific disability that way. Secondly, sometimes there are policies that also affect one specific disability. For example, if a movie does not have audio descriptions, it is specifically affecting the blind because blind cannot enjoy the movie. Or if a movie does not have subtitles or sign language interpretation or closed captions, obviously it's specific to the deaf. So we have to fight for specific issues which are related to our disability. But at the same time, we also have to have a united voice and ensure that we are supporting other disabilities as well and ensuring that they get a voice too and their demands are not ignored that way. So I don't know whether I've answered your question, but that's my view.
That's clear explanation. Yes. Thank you. Could we have Sarah Sunny on here? A question for you, Sarah. There's, the human rights, and identity is what, the deaf community need that space, isn't it? So be it education. So is human rights something that needs to be upheld in the education space? So are you asking me if deaf people are aware of their human rights? Well, deaf people have their own strengths, and they have so many rights that they can, there are many rights that they can, get to, be it education. For example, let me say many deaf, students have asked me that, have come to me because there's no interpreter in their educational institutions, or there's no accessible communication environment given. But as per RPWD Act, there is supposed to be accessibility for them. In fact, one deaf student had reached out to me, studying in a very well-known college, and his phone was taken away by the lecturer because he was using the phone for the captioning. He was following the speech to text option. And he did mention to the faculty as well that, I have, I'm deaf and I need this accessibility feature. But so this student had come to me, and then, yes, and the teacher had actually threatened him that if he doesn't give the phone, she's going to cut his marks or anything like that. It's going to affect his performance and his outcome. So then, I had explained to him that he has to advocate for his rights and he has to make people aware. And I think that problem is kind of resolved now. There is, even in employment, yes, sector, there's many deaf people working in companies and they're not involved in the team meetings. They're either not informed and they have no accessibility option given, either interpreter or captioning, and they're just given a debrief which is not in detail. And even when deaf people are in a meeting, invited to the meeting, they're put aside. They're usually seated in some corner. So they're almost like they're invisible. So there are many deaf working in IT companies, and so they have the right to be heard. They have the right to make their voices heard. They can't just be handheld all the time. So they should know that, and they should advocate for themselves. Be it government offices or hospitals, accessibility in the form of interpreters should be given for the deaf. So if that is not made available, I think we can file a petition. Thank you. Thank you very much for that explanation. Could we have Amar Jain spotlighted, please? Could we have Amar Jain spotlighted, please?
Amar, can you? Yeah.
All right. A question to you, Amar.
Yes.
There are many blind individuals that face challenges in the education sector. So it's not really, changed in a big way. So how do you think the education sector could be changed, could be transformed in order to make that accessible?
In my personal opinion, not just education, in any sector, be it education, be it employment, be it the consumer goods and services sector, be it the social inclusion, and so many others, the demand for accessibility has to be consistent and has to be actively pushed for. Uh, we must also understand that accessibility is not something that can happen overnight. It will take years to happen. What we are here for is to build a culture where people understand there is a concept of accessibility and that there is a need for accessibility. As far as India is concerned, we are still at a nascent stage where people are yet to realize what accessibility is all about and why accessibility matters. I've also seen many times that not everybody knows about accessibility needs of other people so well. So there is that gap as well. Also, there is a gap in understanding of who to reach out for right accessibility support. And you know, so the bottom line being that even for education, all players, be it uh, Ministry of Education or University Grants Commission at the higher level, um, colleges, the individuals, those who need accessibility, the service industry that provides accessibility as a service, need to come together to create that enabling framework to make education sector or any sector for that matter more accessible. My only answer would be that the demand for accessibility needs to be consistent and needs to be pushed every single time where there is a need for accessibility, is when slowly the culture will be built to make systems and services and products and so on more accessible to everybody.
Okay, I have another question for you,
Sure.
something very important. Sorry, I couldn't get what Amal is saying. Accessibility is a very broad term. So, there's the government, there has to be open-mindedness in, making things accessible. I agree, as you mentioned. So now going forward, you see that, with technology, do you see that, there could be that accessibility could be improved with technology? Do you see that as a way forward to enhance accessibility?
So I would put it this way, that any infrastructure, be it physical or digital.
Amar, just 1 minute. I think the interpreter just froze. We'll just.
I'm so sorry.
I'll pick up. I'll pick up.
Yes, you can go ahead.
Sure. So I think just to answer this question, I'll put it this way, that be it any infrastructure, whether physical or digital, has the potential to solve for if there is awareness of the problem. If the creators know that there is a segment which requires accessibility, especially post COVID, as all of us know that the digitization took off very significantly, and all the physical modes of even transactions or otherwise went to digital modes. And you would have seen or realized that the demand for accessibility by the persons who are affected for lack of digital accessibility grew many folds. The reason for that was very simple. While technology does have the potential to improve accessibility and improve access in general, but if the technology is created without considering the needs of accessibility in mind for people with disabilities, then it also has the potential to reinforce the barriers that we face otherwise in physical world or in products and services environment. So again, I would go back to the same thing, that the awareness for accessibility needs to be increased, the mainstream which is creating the solutions for masses at large needs to know that we need to provide for accessibility. Um, Certainly, in last few years, technology has been able to solve very innovative challenges through innovative solutions where otherwise we all felt gaps. So, just to give you a very small example, and I'm mindful of the time also. Uh, when I started my journey as a lawyer, for me to be able to read any screenshot or any printed document, there were very limited options, and those were highly time consuming. And in last couple of years, you would know that the utility of screen sharing or screenshots has just increased left, right, center. Today, in our official communications, it's very common for us to send screenshots of materials. It's very common for us to receive data from clients and screenshots. And it was very challenging at one point for me to be able to perform my job because the whole material that I was receiving was inaccessible. And there was a lot of labor that went into converting that material into an accessible format. But with the advancements in AI, today, converting those screenshots or those materials into an accessible one has become easier and has led to reduction of time. The amount of time it takes to convert screenshots into an accessible material or form that I can consume. So today, if I'm wearing a smart glasses or if I'm using AI based apps to extract information from screenshots, the amount of information, accurate information that I'm able to get, and the time it takes to get that information has significantly reduced. And that enables me to perform much better and at par with others as compared to where I was in my previous times. So certainly to that extent, technology has been able to improve access. But if it is designed without considering the needs of people with disabilities in mind, then it also has the same potential to impose similar barriers that we otherwise experience in other forms of life.
Yes, that is something very important. Technology can solve many issues. Yes, like you mentioned, it reduces time and our effort as well. So thank you for that very clear explanation. Could we now have Nipun Malhotra spotlighted, please? And the interpreter as well.
I don't think I'm spotlighted yet. Yeah, now I'm.
Yes, I think it's the very last question, Nipun. There are many barriers in the society as far as accessibility is concerned, and it's certainly not inclusive. And so, could you share any experience of yours where you just changed that situation around, something that was very impacting, which was a barrier as such, but that got changed into something better, something as a learning, something impacting?
Thank you, Amaldev. I think that is a very good question. And I'll give you a story from almost 10 years back, actually. This was in March 2015 when I was going out for drinks with a few friends to this pub in South Delhi. At that pub, the restaurant manager actually said that I am not going to allow you inside because the environment of the pub will get spoiled seeing a disabled person inside on a wheelchair, and it will not be very cool and others won't like it, etc. And I tried going in and as well, but he held my wheelchair and dragged it out, etc. And it was a very humiliating experience that way. But what I did after that is that I sent out a tweet about it on Twitter. And it soon started trending on Twitter, and a big campaign started. And a lot of other people with disabilities also told me about how in some public places they're not treated properly, etc. And I realized that, there needs to be some institutional change. And after that, I actually worked with Zomato, which is the restaurant aggregator app. I'm sure you've heard of it, to add wheelchair access filters to restaurants. This actually did two things. One, it started identifying which restaurants are accessible. But secondly, when restaurants start getting asked these questions, their attitudes also start changing towards persons with disabilities. This is also an important criteria that way. So what started off as something which was very humiliating and disturbing for me, embarrassing in front of my own friends, ended up becoming an advantage that way. So what I always say whenever I speak to both people with disabilities and without disabilities is that you might face various situations in life. It's really how you respond to it and convert a disadvantage into an advantage as well, which will really identify you as a winner that way and will help create change. So, yeah, every calamity is a good opportunity that way. So, I think that's why I wanted to share the story.
Oh, yes, that's something that you actually fought for, and that opened up minds of the entire society now. That is something very impacting. And that's something that we got to keep doing, to make things better and see things resolved in the society. So could we have, thank you, Nipun, for that. And could we please have Sarah Sunny spotlighted? This is my last question for you, Sarah. Sorry, could the interpret be spotlight? That's fine. Sorry. Sorry, I'm driving like a fast car. I'm driving my car real fast. I got to slow down a bit, says Amal, because he went ahead and I couldn't catch up with him. Yes, now it's fine. Yes, thank you. Please, you could repeat. So, Sarah, you see that there's not enough interpreters around. The number of interpreters are very few. And then, how do you envision? Do you think the future, do you think technology will help? And like you said, there's the written mode of communication, but do you think that technology would enhance? How do you see the way forward as far as technology is concerned? So Sarah says, well, you know, yeah, I mean, I like to be in courtroom and I work, right? And I like the physical presence of an interpreter, because there's a lot of learning there that happens, that's learning experience, whereas when we go on a virtual platform, there's so many technical glitches and that's kind of, disturbs the flow. So I personally prefer the presence of an interpreter with me, though there are other options such as closed captions and, uh, the audio, the captioning and all some of those things, I don't find them accessible, uh, when it comes up, like I'm having to reach out to the hearing, colleagues and ask them, what is that? What does that say? Or when is the case happening? Because if it is in a visual format, signages and all that would help. Of course, technology, I guess, you know, for other things, technology could be used, but for interpreting, I would prefer an interpreter, in person who I can work with in a very personal way. So, and somebody that I'm compatible with, someone that I can, gel with. So there's the automated text, speech to text, and things like that. And I have the friend who helps me. Okay, there's the alarms, vibrating alarms. Sometimes when I'm working, I don't, yes, even especially in, workplaces for emergencies or anything, if we could have that vibrating sound alarms turned into, light alarms for the deaf. At work, I have my colleagues help me. Yes, and also another important thing that people should be aware of is deaf culture. I like to explain to them, help them get aware of that, and also teach ISL to some of the, lawyers that I work very closely with, but not everybody. There are many deaf people that, file cases, and not with me, but with other lawyers. So those lawyers don't take enough time to explain. It's very short instructions. Come tomorrow. Tomorrow for what? So they end up calling me, asking what it means, and then I take that time to explain to them, and also let them know that yes, these hearing lawyers that take up cases for deaf people also need that awareness. They need to understand as well. Deaf culture, it depends, also what technology, different options is given, and what we use and who uses what as well. So now I get that, Sarah, that you were in the Supreme Court, and you were able to have an interpreter with you for a hearing. So how was that experience and impact? So about 4 years ago, when I finished my LLB and started working as a lawyer, I requested for interpreters in Karnataka High Court, but I was not. Yes, there was no interpreter, and I was asked to find my own interpreter and pay from my pocket. So I was communicating with the written mode with the judge there for a whole year and a half or so. And then about a year or two ago, I think, yes, about a year ago, last September, I was working with Sanchita Ain, who's a hearing person, advocate. And she asked me, if I wanted an interpreter for this particular hearing in Supreme Court. So then I had to submit a memo to the Supreme Court. And the process took a long time. And finally, that was okayed. And then Sanchita Ain, she navigated through the whole process, and she requested Chief Justice of India that there's a deaf lawyer here, and we request your permission to bring in an interpreter. And he was very welcoming. He just was so warm and accepting of our request. And that's how it happened. So in Karnataka High Court, also, yes, now they've accepted, and I've had an argument, a hearing with an interpreter. So that awareness needs to spread. Yes, I get that. Yes. So, it was a very brief, period of time that I worked there. And I also, met the Chief Justice of India to give and to give access through sign language. And, I also suggested in the accessibility committee, the Supreme Court. So thank you very much for your time. Interpreter to be spotlighted. So dear Nipun, Malhotra, Amar Jain, and Sarah Sani, thank you very much for answering all the questions. And if we have any questions from the participants, please raise your hands. I think we could take about 5 minutes for that. Any questions from the audience? As of now, looks like we have no questions. Harshita, I think you'll have to come on spotlight. Just this. Akanksha is on. She has a question. She has raised her hand. Yes, is that clear? Okay. So I have a question to Sarah Sunny. Could we have Sarah Sunny spotlighted, please? Sarah, you had explained, I mean, the panel discussion was very helpful. Just. Okay, so in the employment exchange, when deaf candidates apply for a job, so, and we are request for an interpreter, wherever, there's job hiring for deaf, to hire deaf individuals. There's job hiring happening for individuals. And when deaf individuals apply for a job request for interpreter, we are usually told that we are to bring our own interpreter and pay from our own pockets. So the employment exchange doesn't take care of that. So yes, we did. I've explained several times also that as per our PWD Act, we need to be given this accessibility option. And so do you have any suggestions for that? So yeah, I think we can, yes, there's this situation has arisen for many of us, So if we have to pay from our own pockets, that becomes very difficult. It's a common scenario. Yes, I guess we'll have to, have some policy changes. Maybe you can explain to them that you cannot pay for the interpreter yourself. And our PWD Act says that the expenses should be borne by the organizations themselves and not by the deaf individuals. So, yes, thank you. Thank you very much. You have to be very direct with them, Sis Sarah. Thank you. I have one question to Sarah Sunny. I'm a student. I see that the quality of education is not good and it's all by the hearing teachers. And I'm, aware, I have a lot of awareness. So I keep spreading that awareness but that's not met with the same, expectations. I do not have the proper backing whenever I go about advocacy or any of the efforts. So I do counsel the deaf community. I need support and backing. So the questions are being asked, where are you? I'm in Punjab. So Sarah's asking, are you associated with any deaf association? So together you can advocate for accessibility in the education institution. And if it is ignored, you can file a case. That's your own right. So I know many deaf have the fear, to file a case or to take them to take anyone to court. So yes, you need to know your own rights and advocate for them. So if you have a deaf association, and you can try that as step one, and if that is ignored, you can file a case, I guess. Thank you. So are we done now? All right. I think we'll be closing the panel discussion. Thank you, Nipun Malhotra, Amar Jain, and Sarah Sunny for joining this panel
Thank you so much.
discussion and answering all the queries, and especially related to the deaf and how to create those inclusive spaces and make spaces accessible.
Thank you so much.
Interpreter. Could we have the interpreter spotlighted, please?
Yes. Yes, I had a question actually.
Surinderji.
Though we are closing, can I still ask some question?
Yes. We have
Actually,
a very short window. Yes, you're welcome
yeah,
to.
just a small question. Thank you for this great proceeding. My question is actually to three of them, Nipunji and Sarah and Damaji. You have achieved a lot in your professional area of work. And my question is that, what do you think and perceive are your leadership qualities which have helped you to become such a great leader as well as an advocate of your rights, especially in the accessibility area, so that those qualities can be inculcated in the new generation of people with disabilities, as well as make the persons, your allies, be it hearing or so-called non-disabled people, so that they too nurture the potentials of people with disabilities to become great leaders or professionals, or realize their full potential. Am I clear in my question? So I'm looking for your qualities as leaders. So if any one of you would like to come and make us aware of the qualities of a good leader.
Should I answer it?
Sure, Nipunji.
Yeah. No, I think, ma'am, I'm still in the process to be a great leader. I think I'm still a student of disability activism, and I think there's a lot more to do. I'm still very young that way. But I think something that has helped me in my journey is persistence. That is something which I think every young disability rights activist also needs to learn. And I'll give you a few examples to explain that. I remember when I entered St. Stephen's College, for example, I wanted to study economics, and the economics classroom had been on the first floor for 125 years. And the principal actually said that I cannot shift the economics classroom down just for one person. You'll have to go up one floor every day. I was really keen to study at St. Stephen's because it's India's best college. There are so many members of parliament, etc., who come out of it. And I said, sure. And for 4 days, my wheelchair was actually lifted up to the first floor every day. And seeing my persistence, the college itself got embarrassed and shifted the classroom down. Later in my advocacy life as well, I mean, through all the PLs that I've done, but also through the advocacy with the government that we've done, or the work that I've done at Nepen Foundation, success doesn't come instantly. I think a lot of the younger generation feels that, if you do something, we should get a result instantly. You need to be persistent and you need to keep pushing boundaries, and eventually you will succeed. So I think the one lesson that I would like to tell everybody is that persistence, just keep being persistent. And if you are persistent in your goals, you will eventually achieve your goals. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Great answer. I agree. Sarah, would you like to add? Would like and Amarji?
Sure. Well, I'm not sure whether I've still reached that stage where I can be called a leader. But I think if you ask me from a broad perspective, in addition to what Nipun said, uh, when you are faced with a problem, instead of just solving it for yourself, if you keep the broader community in mind as to how your solution can lead to an impact for larger community, definitely is going to get take you uh, far ahead. So, for instance, I was in my early days of career and I wanted to buy a home for myself. And I was denied on the ground of disability that I can't avail housing loan. At best, somebody else can be the main applicant, and I can jointly apply with the main applicant to avail a house loan. And it was emotionally heartwarming because, as at least in India, we all have great emotions attached to, you know, property buying, so to speak. And I reached out to the housing finance company, and the reached out to the legal compliance team and chief credit officer and risk officer and everybody. And all of them were very sweet to me on phone calls, etc. But nobody responded to me, on emails when I asked about the status of my application. Uh, and eventually, my file was neither approved nor rejected. It was stuck for more than a month. And I was very frustrated. Now, the easiest solution for me would have been to just go to the relevant authority and say that I have been denied, please solve it for myself. But instead, I went with this as an incident and I said that, please come out with a circular for all persons with disabilities that housing companies cannot be discriminating on grounds of disability when it comes to giving of the housing loans, number one. And secondly, also give some guidelines on what they need to follow when they need to provide housing loan. So, for example, in case of a blindness, I would need assistance in filling the forms, or I may need assistance in knowing the terms and conditions. If those are not digitally accessibly available, uh, so some of those guidelines they put in place, and it actually led to issuance of circulars. I have many such examples, but all I'm wanting to say here is that thinking of the community when you are faced with a problem and when you want to resolve it definitely will take you far ahead than thinking of for your own self.
Yes, I agree. Thank you. Thank you for your very good answer. Thank you,
Thank you,
Amarji.
ma'am.
Thank you. Thank you very much. So we are, yes, we are closing the panel discussion. Thank you once again, Nipun Malhotra, Amar Jain, and Sarah Sani for joining us this evening and for your valuable input. Thank you, everyone who's taken the time to watch, to join. Thank you, interpreters, Renu and Harshita, for all your support. Thank you, Leon and the admin team. Thank you, everyone, for the back-end support, and thank you, everyone, for your support. So we'll be posting this very soon, the recorded version. We'll be uploading it on YouTube shortly on Hear a Million channel. Thank you, everybody. Thank you, Harshita and Renu, for